Let me kind of get us started, guys. Would you get her quiet now, please, sir? Bob Franklin is running late. He's stuck on interstate, so call the Planning and Zoning Committee to order. Would one of you gentlemen start us with a prayer, please?
I'll be glad to.
Tom, thank you.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this glorious day. Thank you for the friendships and relationships we make dealing with this on a daily basis, trying to serve the people of the county. But more than anything, Father, thank you for the salvation you've given us the opportunity to have. In God's name we pray, amen.
Amen.
Hey, Mr. Franklin.
Well, I just called you, sir.
I know, I was running up here.
Okay. I like
Can't
it.
run and talk on the phone.
I like the outfit
Can't
there,
run and talk on
Bob.
the phone, right.
You got minutes in front of you?
On time.
Who's taking minutes? Are you taking minutes? Or am I? Okay, sorry.
Oh, you're welcome to, and I'll leave.
No, honey. You're sitting this side. No, baby. You're right
Like,
here.
I'm glad on that
Is
shit.
that a form of motion?
We have minutes on the table. Take a minute for you to look at it and wait for a motion.
So moved.
I need a copy of
Second.
it. If I can.
You don't have a copy?
They were in your
We have-
packet in
we have-
April.
We have a motion that the minutes be approved,
I'll second.
and got a second. Kevin Costa, you second?
Well, we did it together, but they can figure by half.
All in favor?
Aye.
Tonight on the agenda, there's two things that I want to address. The first is Tom has an issue on some funding that he wanted to make sure the committee was good with, and the second would be the lot size issue. How the committee feels about that. So let's start with Tom. You, if you will, jump in
Okay.
here and tell me what you have and tell me
Okay, before
how
I
it fits in with our flood.
okay, before I get on that, I will tell you I've got copies of what y'all approved on the lot size
Mhm.
back in February, and I've also got copies of the recommendation that came out of planning
Okay.
that I can distribute to you and let you look at.
Well, let's take it up second.
Okay, I will. I just want to let you know I had copies.
Okay.
The first thing on the agenda, you may recall that we had a presentation from the state of Tennessee about something called the 3DHP program, which stands for three-dimensional hydrography program. I don't know if y'all remember, there's a page in here that I think illustrates it as well as anything. Right now, our hydrologic data that we have for our GIS system looks about like this, and what they're proposing is to give us a layer that looks about like this in the same type of geographic area.
More refined.
Yeah, more refined, more detailed, using LiDAR to kind of shoot the bottoms of the stream beds and the way I would say it is right now what we've got is a pretty good layer of blue line streams. This one will have blue line streams and maybe all the wet weather conveyances that drain to the blue line streams. And so long term it'll do two things. It'll help developers and their engineers that are coming to get data from us to do their drainage designs to have better data to start from, but it'll also help us hopefully on future watershed studies. I'll point out, we've already paid for and have started the Corps of Engineers drainage study, giving us heightened data, number one, but also heightened modeling information that they're using from the data they're collecting on the Spencer Creek watershed. Hopefully going forward as they go to another watershed, we'll have this data in hand to hand them to start from, and I'm hopeful it might reduce overall cost to the Corps projects. I can't guarantee that. It's up to the Corps whether or not they'll give us that discount in return for us giving them additional data, but that's what the advantage of it is. The other advantage is while the Corps is doing flood modeling, which is more detailed on each of these sub-watersheds, this is a more detailed data layer that covers approximately 90% of the county. And what I mean by that is it includes the Stones River watershed and the Cumberland River watershed as it drains to Old Hickory Lake Reservoir. That covers roughly 90-95% of the county. The only part of the county it does not cover is the Smith Creek watershed that drains ultimately to the Caney Fork River. And that part of the county is probably the least developed and likely the least developable.
Minute.
Yeah. It's got steep slopes everywhere, and it's in the far southeast part of the county. It doesn't have a lot of water and sewer infrastructure to speak of. So in return for, they were asking for $100,000. They did come back to me after they met with you the first or second time and said because it doesn't cover the Smith Fork watershed, they're willing to take $90,000 from us to be a partner with Davidson, Sumner, Williamson, and the state, obviously.
Well,
And
we
I
have
think
access to
USGS
their data also, and they have access to our data.
I would think
think
so.
so,
I can
yeah.
I can verify that with the state, but I would think so
Okay.
if we ask for it, particularly if we're a participating member.
Okay.
So anyways, you remember the presentation and the pitch they gave you. So I've got $200,000 in my line items for consulting. My initial intent in this fiscal year had been to use that $200,000 this year to complete the land use plan. The growth plan came in like a socket wrench and in the middle of the gears and kind of stopped all that, full stop.
Mount Judah.
Why did that stop the land use plan?
Because roughly, I'm going to guess about 75% of what we would have talked about changing in the land use plan would have then fallen in Mount Juliet's initial request. So,
We'd still have zoning.
I'm sorry?
We'd still have zoning.
We would still have the zoning, but we don't have land use direction, so the recommending body becomes the Mount Juliet Regional Planning Commission, not the County Planning Commission, and it follows their land use plan, which would then have to be in turn expanded. So we've kind of paused on the land use plan and not made any progress on it while the growth plan was negotiated out. We're getting close on the negotiating side, as I understand it, so hopefully the committee will meet again and agree to send something out to each of the legislative bodies. Going a little bit in the weeds, every one of the legislative bodies has to pass what the Growth Coordinating Committee recommends out for it to become valid. If any one of the legislative bodies votes against it, it gets sent back to the Urban Growth Plan Committee for more negotiation and so on and so forth. So, I say all that to say, that has been paused, for lack of a better word, not stopped, but paused. And I do intend, once we get the growth plan kind of off dead center and out of the way, I intend to go back, and I've talked with my consultants at GNRC, to go back and complete it. But based off the input we've gotten, based off some of the things we've been doing in the interim, such as this density ordinance. But anyways, all that being said, I've got that money in the line item this year that is not going to be spent.
90,000.
Yes, I've got more than 90,000, but I've got the 90,000
It was allocated for a land
that was
use
out.
plan.
It was allocated in consultants.
Okay. Okay.
And the money is recurring, so it's proposed in my '24 budget to be there again. So
You happy?
I technically,
I'm happy as a clown.
I technically probably could have spent the money and come back if y'all yelled or whatever and said, well, it was in my budget. But talking to Aaron about it, both of us kind of felt more comfortable since y'all had seen the initial presentation and had questions about the 3DHP program and whether or not it was worth us spending money on to bring it back to you before I pulled the trigger and called them and told us. And this is all subject to them being able to get us a check or get us an invoice and us get them a check before the end of this fiscal year. We cannot, if it gets into next fiscal year, it may very well get messed up with the land use plan needs.
You gotta move on it, it's gonna move on
Yes.
I
So,
move to approve.
it. Have a motion approved, have a second. Any other discussion?
It will go in the motion that it will be used in this fiscal year, right, Tom?
yeah, if that's what you wish, yeah. I mean,
Goodbye.
Yes.
It has to be used
Yeah.
this fiscal year.
yeah. If the state's unable to get us an invoice and us get them a check cut before the end of the fiscal year, they'll have to wait. They'll have to get in line with everybody else.
We have, don't have any further discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, it passes. The second issue we'll talk about briefly, throw back out on the table. Mr. Bashir has put together a lot size from what we used to have, and I guess you'd call it a vary from the initial lot size, and I think it was the right way to go. There was a recommendation came out of the Planning Commission 3 weeks ago about that. Changing that a little bit I've had several calls saying, hey, if you do this, the agricultural lot size and I didn't look at it, but the comment was agricultural lot size and the residential lot size gonna be the same, and we don't need to do that. So there was some argumentation on that. So at any rate, want to do a little discussion. The chair believes that the lot size and all that our staff put together is more favorable to what we need in the county, but pitch it out from there.
So part of what
I know Tommy wants to address it also. Go ahead.
One thing I wanted to tell you, I'm going to have to put at least the recommendation of the planning commission has got to be heard by the county commission on Monday night. And to that point, the one that came out in the packet has got some copy issues. So I'm probably going to drop a cleaner copy like you're seeing tonight of the one that planning commission recommended, regional planning commission recommended, on the table on Monday for them to have, for the county commission to have. This is the other one, guys. The question, I don't want to confuse matters Monday night. If we're going to have confusion, I'd rather work it out tonight. So you've got both versions. You've got the version I originally drafted and y'all approved.
Which was the 2/7?
February 7th. And then
Okay.
you've got the one that's got more brown heading that the planning commission recommended approval of as amended. So I guess I'm looking a little bit for some guidance about how y'all
I
want to.
wish, Tom, you would state the differences for everybody on the
Okay.
committee, because some of them may have just got this right in front of them right
I think
now.
Yeah.
they voted, Tony.
Yeah, so
They're both on. This is.
So this is the February 7th one that you guys passed. In R1, one of the primary differences is we were proposing a 40,000 square foot minimum lot size across the board, whether or not you had public sewer. What the planning commission opted to do instead was to maintain a 40,000 square foot minimum lot size on any type of septic or for no water or septic, but require 30,000 or allow 30,000 square foot if you've got public sewers and public water. So they leave a differential in there, but they do up the size from 25,000 as it currently stands to 30,000. So that's one of the primary differences. The other difference that's a primary difference I would define is I initially called out 80,000 square feet for A1 minimum lot size, which is just shy of 2 acres. The current A1 is 40,000 square feet. What they proposed was to maintain the current A1 single-family lot size of 40,000 square feet. They did choose to maintain the increase in lot size for anybody wishing to do a duplex. So that's the same in both versions, 120,000. Right now, if you've got a 60,000 square foot lot, you can do a two-family dwelling or a duplex traditionally. They're proposing that, and you all proposed with your approval, making a duplex in A1 have 120,000 square feet. I believe the R2 is the same in both. And the R3 is the same in both. And the A2 is the same in both. So the predominant differences are in the A1 and R1 districts. Did I explain that the way you wanted it?
Mhm.
Okay. There you go.
So procedurally, where do we stand? We I think have blessed one, the planning commission made a modification. I personally believe we need to take staff recommendations for the original one, but procedurally, does it go to the commission as the planning commission recommended, or
It-
did we amend it if that's to be amended, or how?
They have to consider the recommendation of the planning commission.
Okay.
You have the right to amend what the planning commission has recommended on the floor.
Okay.
Now, what came in our packet, Diane, I think it was Tom's recommendation, isn't it?
The
No.
planning commissions kind of the
The planning
Well, that's
commission's
all.
came into
Oh,
packet.
I'm wrong.
But it's very hard to read them. Well, no, I'm asking.
And I said, you don't need to do that, it'll confuse everybody.
We
Right.
got both of them right here.
And that's why I did that tonight,
Good.
so that if we're gonna have confusion, we can work it out tonight about what y'all wanna
There you
see.
go.
By state law, they have to consider the recommendation of the planning commission, or the county commission does. You as county commissioners. You don't have to follow what the planning commission recommended, but you do have to consider.
Well, then it appeared to me that as a member of this committee, if there's any change to what the planning commission recommended, would have to make an amendment on the floor.
Yes, sir.
Is that procedurally correct?
Yeah, and I intend to.
Pardon?
On the R1, I'm gonna make that amendment, or I'm gonna make a motion for it.
Okay.
I don't know if I get a second.
Did it
I'll
have
tell
to-
you why. Whenever I first started Mount Juliet, they didn't have a planning department. And the state used to do our planning. We subcontracted with them. And the state wrote all these ordinances, and they wrote this one. They wrote it in the 60s. And I asked the guy, one of the guys who wrote all these ordinances, about all the districts, because I didn't know squat about planning. And he was supposed to educate me before we severed a contract with him. And he told me that the reason that R1 was created was, before that, the state had only allowed everybody to stick off 5 acres with a surveyor. And a lot of landowners would like to give a lot to their kids or whatever, and not have to destroy their farm to do it, just keep some acreage. And so they wanted a rural zoning ordinance in areas that didn't have any infrastructure. And so what R1 is supposed to be is residential zoning where there's very little infrastructure. Originally. And so they figured, and the reason, I said, well, why is that? And they said, well, you figure if you got a whole acre of land, it was, R1 used to be an acre, not 40,000 square feet, it used to be 44,000, whatever. And so the thought was, back in the 60s, a 1,200 square foot house, which everybody was building, and a gravel driveway, and a satellite dish, and a place to park your T-top Camaro if you was really doing well.
You were living uptown.
Damn.
And you living uptown.
Hey, listen, I'm county lord, don't you get in my bailiwick here.
All I had was a Vega. I don't-
You weren't living large at all, were you? Well, the idea was there would still be enough land to absorb all the abuse that the impervious surface would. Well, nowadays, it ain't no 1,200 square foot house. Everybody's got a paved driveway. Most people's either got satellite dishes and all kinds of cars, garages, and buildings. And by the time you figure that, we've taken it down to 40, and now we're wanting to take it down to 30, and it was at 25. I mean,
It was at 15 at one time.
well, it may be, but that's just infrastructure is more than just flushing the commode. I mean, you know,
It
I
is.
mean, it's good infrastructure to have. I certainly enjoy doing it, but listen, here's what our residential rule R1 says. The district is intended to accommodate single-family housing types in a very low-density residential development. The rural residential districts are defined as areas within the county which have only rural levels of public services, including streets, utilities, and fire protection. Okay, well, flushing the commode don't do anything for any of those. And so what we're doing is we're hinging the increase in density on that one infrastructure that has nothing to do with drainage or roads or fire flows or emergency services or anything. So what I thought would be a better idea, and I think taxpayers probably like this too, is let the board figure on if you want to increase density, not let the utility companies. So I'm going to make an amendment to jack it back up to 40,000 square feet like Tom and we've already approved. Because the other thing is, why would we sub out the density increases to a utility company? They are only in charge of one
Yes.
infrastructure. And that's probably the least important out there as far as, you know, infringing upon the neighbor's land.
I guess anybody on this committee, or anybody in the commission could make an amendment. And I appreciate what you're saying, but I don't know whether we need to be a concise or vote on it here, but,
I think
Ms. Jones, you got something you want to
I
say?
think we just either need to, we have to you have to present the planning commission's meeting as the resolution.
you've got to consider their recommendation.
No, that's not what I'm asking.
Yeah.
You have to present their recommendation as the resolution that we vote on.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
more or less,
So you can't
yes.
present this, and then show the recommendation of the planning commission.
Not the way, no, I don't think so.
What needs to happen if you want to vote on your recommendation or the planning commission's recommendation is we don't need an amendment. We need a motion on the floor to vote on staff recommendation or planning commission recommendation.
On planning and zoning committee
That's-
recommendation,
well-
or planning commission recommendation.
I mean, regardless of how you're going to vote, I think we either need to follow your recommendation and this committee's recommendation or the planning commission's. I don't think we need to go to
Modifying.
modify
I would
in between
posit
the
that,
two.
I would posit that what Bobby's talking about doing with the amendment would work.
Yeah, but I
Now,
don't
you
want, I
probably
think,
wanna discuss
I
the
think you
A1.
can very soon, it's confusing enough as it is.
Yeah,
There's no need in confusing it more. We'll have people winding up voting on something they're not pleased with after the fact.
so from that
I mean-
perspective, what I hear you saying, and I think you're saying the same thing Diane did, is don't bring the planning and zoning committee February 7th one into the room.
No, I mean, you said you had to
Got
present
right.
it.
You can present it.
I mean,
I gotta present the planning commission, one, not the planning and zoning committee.
You need to bring the plan and zoning
well, I
for
mean,
us.
Okay,
And I assume we're
You
gonna
know.
take a vote on what we would want to be presented again, to
Uh,
verify it, or?
Chair
or do we-
will entertain a motion.
Well, I mean, I would entertain the same motion, I would make the same motion as we voted on before, that we accept the staff recommendation. Because that's where we left it before, and of course, the planning commission chose to change the numbers.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion, we have a second. Discussion?
I'll bring up one thing that may come up. I can't predict the future, obviously, but I have had some people with heartburn about the 80,000 square foot in the A1.
Mhm.
So there may be some discussion or murmuring about, can we do anything to limit that impact down? Whether it be doing what the planning commission recommended, was going all the way back down to 40, or whether it be somewhere in the middle, 60 or something.
What I'd rather do personally is pass this as written, and in 90 days, look at it, everybody digest it, if you will, and come back and somebody can make an amendment at that point in time.
That is,
So a
Out in the
separate
future.
amendment to deal with that issue.
Later on.
So we're looking at taking one or the other
Yeah,
instead of finding a median in those.
That's
Where
correct. I
like
we
to take
would
one
change
down.
this to
Well,
30. We would be taking it February 7th.
yeah.
Hey, the only reason I focused on R1, I got no A1 in
I
my
understand.
district, or even in my road commission district much, but I will say this, Mount Juliet is already amended their zoning, their subdivision regs to not subdivide in R1 anyway.
Right.
So this is heading toward,
Well, they'll
Litigation.
subdivide, but they won't subdivide anything less than 40,000.
that's right.
Yeah, but that's
Okay.
not for you at the county to even.
Now,
Well,
I do-
but I know, but here's the problem with that. Is if you've got landowners who expect a certain density based on a zoning ordinance, and then when they go to subdivide their property, they find out they can't do it. Then they got a beef, and that's the reason God
And
made
that-
lawyers and judges.
And that's when they come back to us and we do a modification, that'd be the case. All right, we have,
40,000.
we've had a motion and a second, we've had discussion. Any more
I
discussion?
just
Yes, sir.
have a question
Okay.
for Mr. Brashear. On the square footage and all that, in A2, you've got it set as acres.
Yeah.
In A1, it's square feet.
Which one are you looking at? Both of them?
Your
Acres to
recommendation.
A1
Yeah.
acres here.
I think that
Is there a benefit to going to versus square
no, I
footage
was trying to
versus
keep it.
acreage?
I was trying to keep it consistent with what we had now.
Okay.
I believe, and I don't have my zoning. I probably should have brought my zoning ordinance, but I believe A2
It's currently 2 acres.
2 acres.
Okay.
It was just the way it was written. Now, having said that, we don't have a lick of A2 on the ground.
Right.
It was put in specifically for a farming family, if they wished, to be able to say, we don't ever want this to be cut up into a million little pink houses or whatever, we want to preserve the land as best we can. And so, at the time, it was 2 acre minimum. We're proposing that district be increased to 4 acre minimum since we're proposing that since we were proposing that the A1.
Any
be
further discussion?
80,000.
Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. We had discussion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Any other business to bring forward
So,
the kick?
remind me what the motion was
Say no.
to put that. Okay.
What'd she say?
She wanted an opportunity to say no.
I'm sorry?
I didn't
Yeah,
get to
one
say.
no.
Oh, did you say no?
I was talking, but yeah, I'm saying no.
Okay, let the record show
Not
that,
planning commission.
that Diane voted no. Do you have the video that I sent you got sent to you the other day?
Well, I came off, but I didn't know if he took me off.
The evidence that I sent you got sent to you.
Did I get to?
Yes, sir.
Cause I'm a flip phone and I can't see
I
it.
assume that's up to you,
Is it where we can
but
see
you
it better
don't
on
have
your
to make your
phone?
mind up.
Tom, you're out of order.
I gotta find it. Hold on.
Okay. While he's fine, I'm gonna tell a real quick thing about planning and zoning. I was at the Capitol working a little bit out of G5, the downstairs office of the governor's staff. 7475, Strickland was head of liaison with the legislature, and Rick Hinderlight was the guy that was initiating all this planning stuff, and they started it by looking at a great big map, put circles on it, and funny design, and say, that needs to be A1. This over here needs to be R1. This is gonna be resident, and that's where it started, and it's been modified. What we're doing is just modifying and modifying and modifying. So, you know, we're what, 40 years down the road from where it first started by.
I've got it. I'm seeing if I've got the right one up. She had 3 videos, and one of them's a little bit more.
Okay, well, it's,
This is
can you turn it around?
that's Division Street. Hold on a second. Let me rewind it.
Is that
This is
weekend?
last week.
Sunday evening.
Yeah, it's last Sunday evening. That's Chandler Road turning east onto Division Street.
That's Chandler Road Creek running down the middle of the road. All that brown stuff you see is creek water coming out of the corner of, you know, where it's running. That's old Lebanon dirt road right there, running down and running through people's yards and whatever during that torrential downpour we had.
The problem there is the ditch has been filled.
Well,
Um,
his suit,
we
that's
probably
it.
don't need to talk too much about it because since there's litigation, but
The
Okay.
county ditch has got,
yeah.
Okay.
Save that video. It might be,
Oh no,
it might be
That
discovery.
that is discovery. That's the reason I made
I
it.
forwarded it.
Entertain motion to adjourn.
Motion adjourned.
Thank you very much.
All right.